Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of Planet Vulkan. So today the goal is just to get things up and running. So we're going to be downloading the Vulkan SDK and then a few other helpful libraries and then setting them up in a Visual Studio project so we can start building. So just so you know some of the references that I'm using and to give them proper credit, I'm going to be taking some of the ideas from vulcantutorial.com right here. I believe the author of that is Alexander Overvoord. There's a lot of really good information on there on how to get things up and running. So I will be borrowing some of the ideas, not following it exactly, but there's definitely some information I'm going to want to use. I'm also going to be referencing the Vulkan Programming Guide. It's a really fantastic book. It's by Graham Sellers and John Kesenich. It has lots of great information in there, so I'll probably be flipping back into that every now and then. Alright, I'm also going to be using GitHub to store a lot of the project work that I do. I'm not going to be going over how GitHub works. There's lots of information on that on the internet. But I am going to be putting links to the repository, so that way as more work gets done for it, you can always refer to that and it'll give you some information about how everything was done. Alright, so let's get started. First off, we need the Vulkan SDK. It's going to give us all the necessary components for creating and debugging Vulkan applications. It has lots of useful tools and has an FAQ for reference if you need it. It is right here at lunarg.com/vulkansdk. I'm going to put a link to this in the description along with links to all the other libraries and a few other references that I'm going to give you in this video. So first off, you want to download this. I already have. And then you're going to go to wherever it's installed. For me, it's under the C drive. You just have Vulkan SDK. Open it up and open up bin32 and you should see a cube.exe. Go ahead and run that. And if everything worked out nicely, you shouldn't see a nice little spinning cube here. That means that your system's able to run Vulkan properly if it can render. If it's not showing up, then it means that either you haven't downloaded the newest drivers for your video card, or that your video card doesn't actually support Vulkan. So that's the kind of thing you're going to want to double check. Try updating your drivers if it's not showing up, and I'm also going to put a list of which graphics cards are supported in the description, and you can take a look at that and see if it is listed. So now that we have that, you're also going to want to download some other libraries. One is GLFW. This one allows you to build windows very easily, so that way you don't have to do all that from scratch and we can focus just on actually constructing the engine. And the other one that's going to be useful is right over here, GLM. This one will allow you to do linear algebra operations. It saves us a little bit of time. These were both recommendations from that Vulkan tutorial website that I mentioned, and they've been very helpful so far, so I'm going to go ahead and use those. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so open up Visual Studio if you haven't already. We're going to make a new project, so File, New, Project. It's going to be a Win32 console application under Visual C++, and since this is going to be our Planet Vulkan engine, I'm going to call it PV Engine. You can call it whatever you want, but it's easier if it's the same thing, because then your code can match mine. Alright, now we're going to hit Next, and it's actually not going to be a console application here. We're going to make it a static library. We'll get into more about how that works later, but the idea is that when we build a game project, we're actually going to include the engine as part of that game, so that it knows that we're using it. We're going to uncheck precompiled header, and hit Finish. So, this is going to be our engine right here, and we're going to want our games to be a separate project even though they're part of the solution. So we're going to go ahead and right click on the solution for PV Engine. We're going to add a new project, and this is going to be our test game. So once again, it's a Win32 console application. We'll call it Tester Game. And this one will be a console application, and I'm going to make it an empty project. Let's see, there we go. So now we have these two. They're both completely separate from each other. They're in the same solution, but they'll operate differently. And just a reminder, when you build these projects, you will need to make sure you rebuild both of them. Because if you say, like, you change something in the game and you try and run it, if you haven't rebuilt your engine, you might get some kind of odd behavior. Alright, so now we want to link those libraries to the tester game and PV engine, because right now, if we wanted to use the Vulkan SDK or GLFW or any of that, neither one of these knows where to find it. So we need to actually link it up to the project so it knows how to access it. Before we get started, since PV Engine is a static library, when you build it, it's going to generate a library file. But right now, since there's nothing in it, it wouldn't do that. So just to make sure that something actually gets created, let's add a class before we do anything. So right-click, add class, and I'm going to go ahead and add a window class, because later on we're going to need a class that generates the window that the tester game will be generated in. So go ahead and create that. There is our window. And the reason we did that, let's save this first so we don't lose it. Now, if I open up PV Engine in that debug folder, there's nothing. And that's where the library file is going to be generated. So now that we've added some code, even if it's kind of meaningless code, if we right-click PV Engine and build it, when it finishes, if you open up the debug folder, we now have pvengine.lib, and that's what we really needed. Okay? We'll come back to that in a second. So let's go ahead and link up PV Engine to everything it needs. So if we go to Properties, you just right-click it, Properties, and up here in Configurations, you want to make sure that's set to all configurations. There's a debug and a release configuration, and we want to make sure that this is a setting for both of them. Then we're going to go to VC++ directories, and we're going to need to change the include directories and library directories so that we have all of those libraries that we just added in. So first off, let's do include directories. Just click in here, add a line, open it up. And first off, we're going to add the Vulkan SDK. So go ahead and navigate to that, and you're looking for, it's actually an include folder. It makes it real easy. We're going to add another one. And this time, it's going to be GLFW. It's in that little libraries area I made. And you have an include file here as well. Let's go ahead and add that. And GLM is real simple since it's not actually, it's just headers in a sense. Then all you're going to need to do for GLM is actually include the entire folder itself. It doesn't have an include folder, and you won't need to worry about library directories for GLM. It's only for GLFW and include. I'm sorry, GLFW and Vulkan. There we go. So those are in there now. Let's go to library directories, edit that, add a new line. Once again, we're navigating to the Vulkan SDK, and this time we want to include the bin32. That is its library directory. We know that because the library files are inside it. So, bin32, and let's go ahead and get GLFW as well. And I know this seems like a pain, but this is something that is very important, because if you don't do this, you'll get all sorts of fun errors. So inside GLFW, you have all these lib folders. I'm going to use the one for 2015, because that's the Visual Studio version I'm using. Okay, that should take care of that. And you need one more thing. If you go to, this is telling us where to look for the library directories, but we actually need to know what they are. And if you open up C++ right here, I'm sorry, librarian, that's what we need. And there's additional dependencies. We're going to open that up, and you need to actually type out the name of the library files. Now, I'm just going to type those, but if you want to actually see where they're coming from, for Vulkan, if we open it up, remember how I said it's bin32? When you open that up and scroll down, you can see down here we have vulkan-1.lib, and that's exactly what it's looking for. So we're just going to type that in here, or if you want, you can copy-paste the name. That might be safer, but I'm just going to type it. And same is true for GLFW. Once again, we're going to navigate to its location. We'll look in that lib file I mentioned, and there it is, glfw3.lib. So there we go. So everything should be set up for the PV engine now. We're going to apply that and hit OK. And now we need to do the same thing for tester game. So let's open that up, and this one's going to be a little bit different because it is not a static library. It's not super different, but enough that it makes a difference. So once again, VCC directories, go to include directories. I'm just going to navigate there. You could always copy and paste if it saves you some time, but yeah, if you don't feel like watching this, you can always skip ahead of, 30 seconds or so. Okay, Vulkan. Documents. Yeah, went a little bit too far. go. So we got all those. And let's see. They're library directories. And this is going to get a little bit different because we're including all the stuff that we did before. All of that is very important. But the thing you got to remember is we now also have that PV engine library that's going to throw everything off. So we're going to need to include that as well, or the test game won't know how to reference any of the PV engine library. Okay, so we got those. Yeah, let's go ahead and finish up the last part real quick. I believe it's a linker that we need to go to here. There you go. Nope. Oh, input. There we go. Additional dependencies. So yeah, the layout's a little bit different between tester game and PV engine because static library, empty project. Good thing to pay attention to. And once again, we can just type these in instead of having to go looking for them. Okay, so we've got those. So now we need to add in the PV engine stuff. So we're going to go back here again, library directories. And what we're going to do down here is we're not going to reference it directly. We're just going to go ahead and type $solution_dir debug. So that'll look in the main projects folder for the debug folder, because that's what we need to have. That's what we're using for this project. Once again, yes. If you go ahead and open it up, once again, this is the solution directory. You open debug, and that's where the library file is. So that's what it's looking for. All right. And then we also, after adding that, let's go ahead and apply it just so we don't lose our work. Back in the additional dependencies. No, I'm sorry. Getting confused now. Include directories. There we go. And this one, we're just going to go ahead and add solution_dir. I can't spell. There we go. So that is going to tell it where to look for the header files. Alright, and then now we're going to go here to the additional dependencies. And we need to type in that name of the library file that was generated. Let's double check again. This one I'm going to copy and paste just to be absolutely certain we get the right one. Just add that right in there. Okay, and now you should have all of your dependencies. And that should work in theory. We're going to go ahead and set up everything to generate windows and to import, well, rather include the Vulkan SDK and things like that in our scripts in the next project. So I'm going to stop here. Hopefully that works. We'll find out for sure in the next video. And if it's not working, then I'll go ahead and fix that up for you and show you exactly what needs to be done to fix it. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys.